Okay, in the last video we were mentioning about the megapixel size in whatever camera you get to, or whatever camera you buy to take stock with. Now, I kind of made the point that more megapixels is better. Now, in normal photography it doesn't matter so much because you're only going to print an image so high. But when it comes to stock photography, you've got to think about future-proofing yourself and your images once they're online. And there's also another reason for going for more megapixels rather than less. And that is in a situation whereby, let's say for example, you've taken a photo, you weren't able to get any closer, it's a cracking image, but there's only a part of the image that you actually want to portray for stock. The rest of the image is no good and it may well get rejected if you upload that image as it is. Now, to illustrate this point and why it's better to have more megapixels, I've used two cameras. The shot on the on the right here was taken with a Canon EOS 1D Mark III, which has 10 megapixel sensor. And the photo on the left was taken with the Canon EOS 5D Mark II, which has a 21 megapixel sensor. That's quite a big difference. It's more than double the size. Now, to emphasize that point, I'm going to load both of these into Photoshop and show you what I mean. So if I come to crop these images for stock photography, you'll see what happens to the image. But before we do that, let's just look at the image sizes there. You can see here, this one's dimensions from the 1D Mark III 10 megapixel sensor is 3888 by 2592, and the JPEG size is 5.29 megabytes. The Canon 5D Mark II image is, the dimensions are 5616 by 3744 pixels, and that's a JPEG size of 14.5 megabytes. That's quite a bit bigger. So if we now go into Photoshop and have a look at those, we're going to work on the 1DS Mark III image first. Now, I want to crop this in a bit more because let's just say for example there's too much space around the outside and I want to crop in a lot closer. So if you look down here, the uncompressed size is at the moment 28.8 megapixels. Now that is 28.8 megabytes. Now that is uncompressed and it's not big enough for Alamy stock. Alamy needs to be about 50 megabytes. So this already needs to be up-resed, even if I was to keep it as it is to actually get accepted into Alamy. As it is, it's okay for microstock and it would do fine for that, and it's easily big enough file size. But let's just say, to get accepted, I had to crop this down to a much more pleasing kind of size, about there. We've still kept a bit of copy space at the top and down the side and at the bottom, and that is a much better looking stock image. But now, if you look down here, the uncompressed file size is 13.9 megabytes, which is really not very big at all. It's going to need a lot of up-resing to get to Alamy, and it will also need to be up-resed to go to microstock. We've lost too much data, and I'll show you. If I save this now as 9926A, we'll see what file size we get. So we just do that, and we go back to the file, and here's the new image. And it's only 2.27 megabytes, and the dimensions are only 2670 by 1818, which falls way under the specifications required by a lot of the agencies. So by cropping, we've actually lost too much information, and we're going to struggle to get it accepted on any of the sites, let alone the big sites like Alamy. So by having a smaller sensor, you've got to really nail the shot first of all within camera. Because if you're going to start cropping away, then you're going to lose too much information. So you're going to miss out on a lot of shots maybe. So, you know, shots like this where you have to crop in, or there may be some other shots where you've got a cracking shot but you've just got to crop the edges away. You may lose out on quite a lot of kind of images, and, you know, you could lose your money in the long run. Now let's look at the second shot from the 5D Mark II. And what I'm going to first of all do is straighten the image. But before I do that, if you now look down here, the uncompressed file size here is 60.2 megabytes. Now that is already 10 megabytes more than Alamy needs, so it's already a massive file size that is perfect for the traditional stock agencies, but also very, very good for microstock. It'll be really future-proof, because if they increase their needs and wants and desires for file sizes later on, you're already there. So let's just straighten this image first, just to get it looking better. And let's say, for example, that I want to crop right in on this image and get just the interesting bits, which is here. There's too much going on around the outside. It's too complicated at the moment. But let's just say I want to crop in to about here. And we're going to keep the yellow marker buoy in down there. We're going to keep the people looking over the pier. We're going to crop down to about there and crop in a bit closer there. So we've got a much more pleasing image. You can see there what a difference it's made. Going from really kind of complicated right down to something that's actually going on. Your eye can focus on the woman in the boat, the people looking over the edge, you know, all that kind of thing. And we've got the boats and some points of interest at the front here, and the background's fairly blurred. So we've actually got quite a pleasing image, and it's pretty much okay for stock. But if you look down here now, the file size has gone down to 21.8 megabytes. Now that, funnily enough, is almost, if we revert this 1D Mark III image back to how it was, it's at 28.8 as the original file size. So we're not that far off. Even after cropping all of that away from the image, we're still not that far away from the original size of a 10 megapixel sensor. So it's pretty good. So we can still up resist for Alamy, but even as a massive crop like that, it's still good enough for microsites. So let's just save this and see what file size we get now. Let's save that as A, and there we go. Save it as 12 quality, the highest quality you can get. We'll go and look at that file now, and you can see the dimensions are still 3477 by 2194 pixels at 5.15 megabytes. So it's pretty much as a photo would come out from a basic full sensor without any cropping. So even though we've cropped a lot of that image away, we've still got a photo that's good enough for all of the microsites, and it's also good enough to be up-resed to go to companies like Alamy, to agencies like Alamy. So you can see there the massive difference between having a much bigger sensor on your camera. We've talked about lenses being the most important quality and the most important factor, but you can see here why I choose to go for a much bigger sensor, because if I have to do any cropping, I know I'm still left with a really good sized image that is good enough to sell at all the stock agencies. And just to diverse a bit, this also works well for weddings. If you're in a situation you can't get close enough to get that shot just as something happens, you know you can still take that shot, you can crop it in later, zoom in and crop away, and still get something that's printable, that's going to be good for an album, that kind of thing. So bear this in mind when you're looking at getting a camera or upgrading, and try and get as many megapixels as you can, and also, like I said, the finest quality lens that you can. But I hope that helps, and we'll see you on the next video.